Communication takes place in the mind of the listener, not the speaker. That's a quote by Peter Drucker. The Economist says he's the most important management thinker of the past century. If you're interested in him or his work, I've included some readings in this module. I'm hoping that Drucker's quote here alleviates some of the pressure you might be feeling as a communicator. It's not about you at all. It's about your audience and getting a message across to them in as clear and articulate a way as possible. That means that every choice you make when you're communicating is directly dependent on who you're speaking with or writing to. Focusing on your audience, not yourself, is the single easiest way to transform and strengthen your communication strategy. Let's work through an example to illustrate this. Say you've been hired by the yoga company Lululemon Apparel in the corporate communications department. It's your first day on the job, and your boss asks you to write a paragraph about a new line of pants that are coming into stores next month. You obviously really want to impress her, but you're getting a bit anxious about the assignment. What words will you choose? What tone will you take? What kind of information are you going to include? In order to answer these questions, you actually need to ask some of your own first. You need to find out who it is you're writing to. You also need to ask why you're writing and over what platform, but we'll cover these concepts, known as purpose and channel selection, in our next two videos. Are you writing to pre-existing customers? If so, you probably don't need to explain some of the more technical language used to describe products. Lululemon has some really specific jargon that they use for their products, words like Luxe Stream, Second Skin Fit, verbs like wick. Since this audience would already have product knowledge, you could compare this new line of pants with an older line or tell them the best way to use the product. Are they good for spin class, running, yoga? What about writing to the company's board of directors? They'll also have in-depth product knowledge, but they're not going to be as interested in a description of the pants. They want to know why the company is rolling out the product, what the risk may be, and what kind of profitability can be expected. Who they are as a group and their interests informs the content you select for these paragraphs. Are you writing to someone who has never shopped at Lululemon or done a yoga class? This person is going to be completely lost if you tell her that these pants are perfect for downward dog. What does that even mean? What type of background information do you need to give this person in order for him or her to understand how to use the pants? They'll need a lot more context than the previous two audiences that I just described. If you don't understand who your audience is, you're going to fail, even at a simple communication task like this one. So, how do you analyze an audience? And what if there's more than one group or they have competing interests? Let's go over this now. To start, you should always ask yourself the following questions at the outset of a communication task. Who is my primary audience? These are the people that you're directly targeting with your communication, and it's important to separate them out from this next group. Who is my secondary audience? These are people that also receive your communication, but indirectly. Is there someone carbon copied on the email you're sending? Does your boss's assistant sort through and organize her inbox? Or are there other people sitting in the audience of your keynote address at a conference? Who are the key influencers? In the TED Talk I asked you to watch for this module, Kevin Alaka explains why some YouTube videos go viral and others don't. He talks about that double rainbow video and says the reason it was so popular is because Jimmy Kimmel tweeted it out. So it's not going to be too often when Jimmy Kimmel is your direct audience, but you need to think about who the Kimmels are. Who are the people that have the power? Who are the decision makers? When you have a diverse audience or one with competing interests, catering your message to these key influencers is particularly relevant. What is their level of understanding? What type of words can you use to convey the information? What information does the audience already know, and what do you need to explain? Are they familiar with the industry? You need to assess the level of understanding when you select content and language. What is their probable reaction? Addressing a hostile audience is going to be very different than speaking to people who have already bought into your ideas. We'll talk about that later on, but for now, I want you to think how people are going to react. Other questions you should ask are, how big are they? What's their composition? Those are things like age, gender, occupation, background, education, socioeconomic position. What do they need to know? How do they access information? This last question we'll address in an upcoming lecture about channel selection. These are just the beginning. Part of what makes an effective communicator is thinking through what works for you. What do you need to know, depending on the why of what you're writing? So a question that I get from my students a lot is, these are good questions, but how do we get the answers to them? And sometimes it takes a little creativity. You'll notice that in this introductory module, I asked you for a bunch of personal questions about yourself. I'm using this information and reading through it to hopefully cater this course to who you are as a group. Often, keynote speakers at conferences will ask to be put in touch with some audience members to get a feel of who they'll be speaking to. Other times, you're going to be provided with in-depth market analysis of your target audience, or even asked to conduct your own.